the Superintendent. Item 9.2.2. Proposed negotiated agreement with the Lincoln Education Association. Dr. Price.
Blake Simpson is going to share the updates.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to present to this board our tentative 2024-25 professional agreement with the Lincoln Education Association. LEA has approved a tentative agreement. And before I begin and going into some of the details of that agreement that'll be coming forth, I would just like to thank Deb Rasmussen, the president of LEA, as well as her outstanding team of negotiators who worked with us in putting this contract together, and for their very thoughtful and passionate advocacy on behalf of certificated personnel. So, financial terms, this is an agreement that is 1 year in length. The total package increase is 4.55% for next year. A couple things I want to highlight in the total package increase. Very exciting that $700,000 estimated is going to go towards extra standards beginning next year. A large portion of that increase is going to go to increase the coordinator stipend pay for our district coordinators. Along with that, the days we're asking them to work, in addition to their 189, will rise from 10 to 14. The remaining portion of those extra standard funds will go to the Extra Standards Committee. They will meet and determine how those will be spent for next year on extra standards. Among other things that we agreed to with LEA is we have revised our salary schedule. It's gone down to 25 steps this year, and this helps it to be a more sustainable salary schedule. It helps make us more competitive, particularly with mid-career professionals, where there was some stagnation in the salary schedule and some salary compression that we really sought to intentionally address with this agreement and make sure that we can remain competitive with other schools in the state. The 2024-25 base salary is going to increase to $48,556 next year. The EHA increase, it was very helpful to us in negotiations this year and beneficial for our employees. That was only 1.99%. Where on average that had been about over 4% the last several years, so that came down much lower than we would anticipate. Another major change to highlight in this agreement are accumulated leave payouts for certificated personnel after 10 years of service. That number's been stuck at $16.50 per hour since 2007. A lot has happened since 2007. That's going to go up to $20 per hour starting next year. Other changes just want to highlight here is that we made a very concerted effort to improve readability and accessibility with this contract, to remove some of the legalese, empty runway and phrasing, just so it's easier for people to understand in places. We eliminated gendered language. That was very important too, to have a more inclusive document. LEA and LPS, in the spirit of collaboration, have also agreed to adopt joint committees to look at the following 3 issues too, beginning next year. One of those being the extra standards process. This is separate from those additional funds that we discussed a little bit earlier. This is looking out what might be the best way to run our extra standards process, extra standards being those funds devoted to sport coaching or club organization sponsorships and things like that, as well as teacher tenure and appraisal process, and we'll see what recommendations those committees will have for us to look at next year. Another change to note here are blackout days, those days that our certificated personnel are expected to be at work, except if it's an emergency type situation. That's changing to the first 5 days and last 5 days of the year. What will remain the same are the day before and after scheduled breaks during the year to make sure we have adequate staffing at all of our buildings. Leaves of absence, beginning next year, teachers returning from a first-year leave of absence would be placed after surplus certificated employees. The variance process, this is very exciting. So variance, just to give a high-level summary, is when we wish to deviate, or a building wishes to deviate from the standard schedule that's been agreed to with LPS and LEA, they need to go through what's called the variance process to get that approved. What will stay the same is there will still be collaboration with building administrators and faculty representatives. The paperwork and approval process have both been streamlined. So instead of 2 different forms in the appendix of the agreement, there's one that covers all the subjects that those 2 forms did in the past. It still needs to be approved by the LEA president and the Associate Superintendent of HR. When it does get to the point of a staff ratification vote, the threshold to pass moves from 85 down to 75%, and we hope that this would encourage more innovation with our schedules at the building level. Finally, something near and dear to me is that we amended Section 519 to make it harmonious with Appendix D. Over time, it just kind of deviated from each other, but now there won't be any confusion there, I think, when our staff looks at those parts of the contract. Professional time. Several notable changes with professional time starting next year. One huge one, not just for our staff, but for the community and students as well, is that the teacher calendar will be the same for all grade levels under this proposed agreement. Early release PLCs will be eliminated at all levels. Professional learning / plan days will be on the same 6 days for every grade level next year. The May duty day is going to be consistent for all staff members starting next year. Right now, there's an option for January or May. That just provides greater certainty and consistency for our staff. One last thing to note, staff meetings are limited to 1 staff meeting per month, up to 75 minutes beginning next year. Does the board have any questions?
Any questions or discussion? Mrs. Danik.
It's actually just so you can clarify, we didn't get rid of their daily plan time. This is just the PLC time that those 6 days are. I don't want my phone to ring when you say, we replaced plan time with 6 days. So they still have their daily plan time.
That is correct. There's been no changes to the amount of daily plan time that they would receive.
Thank you. And good job.
Dr. Rauner.
Yeah, 2 things that jump out to me. One is I think the increased flexibility is 75%, so more schools can innovate. And the other thing, it's been a while, but when I had 3 daughters, 1 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school, the differing schedules was a really difficult thing. So I'm going to guess that that's going to be popular in the community.
Any further discussion? Ms. Mungard.
So would it be fair to say that what was negotiated and reached here is some sort of like a little bit more clarity overall, like within the contract, which I did read the contract and I have read our past contracts, and I will agree that it is easier to read and understand. But almost more important than that, in that what has been discussed, negotiated, is not only hopefully healthier, better, uplifted the professional standards and expectations for our teachers, but also is hopefully going to create some consistency for families. For where PLCs in this level, I think they had a purpose, and I think they have served a purpose, but we got to a place where perhaps they're not serving the purpose, and quite frankly, as a parent, I'm with Bob, they can make life very confusing on certain Tuesdays of the month. So this kind of helps with that, but what we're not saying is it's not important that planning time and that collaboration time between teachers. We're just somewhat changing and respectfully changing, and hopefully with input from the teachers changing. This is a better way for us at this point in time in the 21st century, in 2024 or 25, to be doing that work. Is that kind of, am I understanding this correctly? As well as you call it it's another one of those teacher words, the standards, the extra standards. The extra standards in my language means those teachers who step up to coach to step up to help out with the dance team are those what we mean by extra standards? So I kind of asked two questions there. This first one is like simplicity, but it helps everybody, hopefully. And then the other one is, what do we mean by those extra standards?
Sure. The first question, yes, on behalf of our negotiating team, I can tell you the result of this with professional time, our purpose was to show that we did value certificated personnel as professionals and to use their time efficiently, effectively. It's not that we thought any less of PLC or professional learning time at all. We felt that this was the best way to package this for our staff so that everybody can be successful and benefit in the LPS community. Extra standards. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So you mentioned it a couple of times, and I'm not 100% sure. What does extra standards mean in teacher world?
So it's compensation for extra duties that they take on that may be beyond where they are with their base salary. It can be a lot of different things on our salary schedule. Coordinators, that's on the extra standards, those additional responsibilities that those personnel take on. Department chairs, coaches, club sponsors, those organizations. It involves compensation. It runs through much of it runs through the Extra Standards Committee to determine what those amounts jointly with LPS and LEA. And if I've missed any details on that, Sarah, you can chime in.
Sure. I would just add as a point of clarification, we are not eliminating PLC and teacher collaboration. Instead of doing that after you've taught a full school day, we are going to swing that into teacher contract time on these 6 days where students are not in session. So they can show up ready to collaborate without having a full work day in advance of those meetings. So we are not eliminating PLCs. They will be occurring at a different, more protected time for teachers.
That feels healthier way of saying it to me as well, because I like PLCs as a parent. I mean, I always felt it was a great idea. So, because it helps you understand they're trying to, all the second grade teachers are working together to be the best second grade that they can be for all kids. So, thank you for the clarification.
Mrs. Danig.
So I have one more question, because all of this revises the calendar that we've already adopted. Do we have to wait until we voted in to get the calendar committee to revise next year's calendar? Because I assume this goes into place next fall, correct?
Yeah, Dr. Neal, would you like to speak to that?
We'll
Thank
be
you.
meeting shortly, and
Yes.
you should expect something on a future board agenda.
Perfect, because the parents like to know as soon as possible. And we generally carry these out a couple of years in advance, our calendars, right? Aren't we usually 1 to 2 years in advance?
So the next thing you'll see will be just the 24-25 school year, just to get that as quickly as possible, and then we'll go back to the calendar committee and relook at those calendars for projecting out from there.
Thank you, Dr. Neal.
Any further discussion? The Lincoln Board of Education deeply appreciates the care, consideration, and collaborative problem-solving approach that both LEA and LPS administration brought to the negotiations process. We are committed to hiring and supporting the highest quality teachers, while being fiscally accountable to the community. This tentative agreement serves our community's children and reflects our community's values while creating a sustainable system in supporting our talented teachers. Seeing none, this item will come back to us at our next meeting. For second reading, from board committees we have item 10.1.1, 3000 Policy Series Update. Is there a motion for approval? Ms. Mungard.
I move we approve 10.1.1, the 3000 Policy Series Update.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayhew.
I second that.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Rauner,
Yes.
Mr. Srivastava,
Yes.
Mrs. Danning,
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew,
Yes.
Ms. Mungard,
Yes.
Mr. Boswell.
Yes.